so nearby Nisha. You any good at doing impressions?
No.
Oh, okay.
No way.
So Ernie Hudson is an actor best and perhaps only known for playing the character Winston Zeddemore in the Ghostbusters movie. A role Hudson has a great fondness for and has reprised many times, which didn't stop the actor from missing out on a Ghostbusters-related gig because he didn't sound enough like Ernie Hudson.
So he didn't sound like himself.
Yes.
How? How?
Well, let's get into that, shall we? So first things first, this is obviously something that pissed Hudson off. And while he can talk about it with some humour today, it's still one of those things where, like, it stings a little bit, especially considering his own history with the Ghostbusters franchise, and specifically how much he seems to get relegated to, like, being a side character almost in a series in which he's one of the titular Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I feel like in that film you don't see that much of him.
No, and we can get to why that's the case in a moment, but I actually have a copy of the Ghostbusters poster here, you know, in lovely, like, 360p, but do you know something about the poster, Nisha?
He's not on it.
He's not on the poster, no. He's also not listed as one of the actors. Do you know who is listed? Sigourney Weaver. Sigourney Weaver's not on that poster, but she's mentioned.
So, yeah, if Sigourney's mentioned on it, then surely Ernie should be mentioned. Like,
yeah, he's one of the titular Ghostbusters, and his actual appearance in the movie is something that Hudson is kind of annoyed about, because initially his character had a lot of backstory, and there was like 3 full pages of backstory for his character, which the studio told them to cut for time, which results in his character literally just walking into the movie and saying, yeah, a job's a job.
If there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
And that's not even the worst part. Would you like to hazard a guess, Nisha, at how it could possibly get worse for Hudson?
I don't know, because, like, what, he's not credited, he's not in the poster, you hardly see him in the film, like, how could it get any worse?
Well, some versions of Ghostbusters for home release literally edit him out of the film's climax. And for that, Nisha, we're going to go to the blurry photos I have for the article here, and we have here, it's the last shot.
Yeah.
Got your stick? Oh!
One of the last shots in the movie. Mm-hmm. You know, they all look really badass. But here's the thing, Nisha. Back in the day, they didn't have widescreen. They had 4:3.
Oh, they've cut him out then, haven't they?
So when you do it in 4:3...
Like, zoomed in. No!
No. They literally edit him out of some versions of the film for home releases.
Got your stick? Oh!
And now imagine you're Ernie Hudson and you're watching Ghostbusters on TV and you're not in it. And you know you're in it because you watched it in the cinema and you were there when they filmed it.
I'm sure I was in that scene.
Yeah. So they edit it to cut him out.
No. Poor Ernie.
And it's one of those things as well where a lot of discussions have been had about it being kind of racist because he's like the only black Ghostbuster and he's left out of all the promotional material. Like they literally edit him out of some versions of the movie.
Yeah, it is pretty bad.
And it gets worse as well because you go to like Ghostbusters 2 where they did correct it for Ghostbusters 2 and they put him on the poster, but they didn't put his name. So even when they tried to course correct for Ghostbusters 2, they still didn't give him credit for a poster on which his face is 1/4 of it.
Yeah, I feel frustrated for him.
Yeah, and that's it's one of those things where it's so frustrating for him as an actor because, like, you know, he's on the poster. He's one of the Ghostbusters. He has a great fondness for the role. It's one of his most famous roles. It's something, you know, he continues to enjoy a lot of success because of.
Yeah.
But there's still those, like, you know, sour feelings about literally being left off the poster and then not getting his proper credit.
Yeah.
Like some versions of the film, honestly, like they spell his character's name incorrectly because the character is Winston Zeddemore with an E, but in the original credits, they spell his character's name wrong.
Was there anyone who even tried to stick up for Ernie Hudson?
Yes, he does have one shooter in his corner, and luckily for him, it's like, you know, one of the most important people in the entire film, Bill fucking Murray. And Bill Murray has reportedly shared the same frustration as Hudson, not being given his dues as a full-fledged member of the Ghostbusters crew, and was annoyed on his behalf at stuff like him being left off the poster, or not being credited properly in promotional materials, or being left out of things like, you know, group interviews and things like that. So, when the time came to make Ghostbusters the video game, which many fans and members of the crew considered to be the true sequel to Ghostbusters 2, because it was written by, I believe, the original writers of Ghostbusters and has the entire original cast reprising their roles. Mm-hmm. One of Bill Murray's only criteria for appearing in that game is that Hudson be given full and proper credit. and that he'd be elevated to full Ghostbusters status.
Good.
You thinking what I'm thinking?
Thin crust New York style with no visible anchovy.
Maybe later.
And that was really cool with Bill Murray to do. And you'd think Bill Murray himself saying, just cut this shit out, give Hudson proper credit, would result in him getting proper credit. But no, he still gets conveniently left out of things like the Blu-ray release of the film. Because they just use the original poster, which doesn't have him on it. And it's like, fuck's sake. And it just starts all over again. But bringing it back to Ernie Hudson not sounding enough like Ernie Hudson. After the success of Ghostbusters 1 and 2, there were rumblings of a Ghostbusters cartoon, which most of the principal cast didn't really want to reprise their roles for, but Hudson was excited about it. He was like, yeah, I'll reprise my role as Winston Zeno. I'll do that, sounds like a great laugh. And he assumed he'd be a shoo-in for the character because it's him. And when his agent calls him and says, okay, you need to go do a reading. He's like, what do you mean I need to go do a reading? It's my character. Like, they still want you to do a reading, we're afraid. It's like, okay, maybe it's just one of those things. I have to do it. You know, it's one of those things, it's like just a formality at this point. So he goes in and he sits down and he reads the lines. And he gets stopped halfway through his initial line reading. And the producer says, I'm sorry, but can you deliver the line more like Ernie Hudson would in Ghostbusters? And he's like, I am Ernie Hudson!
No, they did not
They
say
said
that.
to his face.
No. Can you deliver this line more like yourself, please?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
And Hudson was like baffled by this. He thought it was a joke because they were telling him, we don't think that Ernie Hudson would have sounded like that. And he goes, but I'm Ernie Hudson and that's what I think I sound like. And like, it just doesn't sound right. And there is like an argument to be made for this where like, just because you're a good actor doesn't mean you're a good voice actor. And it's a different set of skills. Like, you know, they're under the same umbrella, but like voice acting and acting are a different beast. And just because you're a great actor doesn't necessarily mean you'll be a great voice actor and vice versa. But the fact they were telling him to his face sound more like Ernie Hudson, it's like, but I am Ernie Hudson.
It's just so daft. I'm like, my brain's just like, what the fuck?
And they eventually ended up casting Arsenio Hall instead of Ernie Hudson in the role. And Hudson bears no ill will towards Arsenio Hall because they're friends in real life. He says, you know, he did a really great part. It's just kind of annoying that the reason they cast him is because he apparently sounded more like the character I played than I did.
But how? I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. One of the most annoying things is when you play a game that's based off a film or a TV series or whatever, if the characters don't sound like the original actors or the cast, it puts you off. It puts me off anyway. Yeah. I'm like, they have to sound like the actual actors. They have to be voiced by the actors. It's not the same.
Or if you are going to get a sound-alike, I think an example that we mentioned is the Scarface video game, where they had a sound-alike for Al Pacino, that Al Pacino himself picked out because he didn't think he sounded enough like he did back, like, you know, in the 80s. Yeah. Which is fair enough after, like, you know, 40 years. He just doesn't sound the same anymore. Yeah. So he personally picked out his own sound-alike. This is like a couple years after Ghostbusters. I was
going to say, if it's like not much time has passed, it's going to sound the same.
He sounds exactly the same and he has the same enthusiasm for the role. And like, you know, who better to play the character than the guy who's already played him twice before? And there's just a few examples of that are uniquely frustrating. Like the recent HeMan series. And the recent HeMan series, they got Mark Hamill to voice Skeletor. Okay. And that's fine. You know, Mark Hamill's a great voice actor, but he's not Skeletor. And I remember when I heard that casting, I went, well, maybe the guy who did Skeletor's dead. I think it's Alan Oppenheimer's the guy who did Skeletor, and he was like in his 90s last time I checked. And I looked and went, oh no, Alan Oppenheimer is 1, still alive, 2, still doing voice acting, 3, still does the Skeletor voice for like cameo and shit like that, or like, you know, for fans when they ask him to at cons and things of that nature. And 4, he's in the show. They had him in the show, but they didn't let him do the Skeletor voice.
So what is he doing in the show?
Well, he's not being Skeletor, I'll tell you that for free.
Oh my god. That just doesn't make sense.
That's the thing, like, you've got him right there. Just make him do the Skeletor voice.
Oh my god. I think like one voice, I feel like they could not replace unless they got someone who's perfect as Peter Sallis for Wallace.
For like...
Because that is just a very unique voice. That is just Wallace voice.
It'd be like trying to replace like Homer Simpson or something, wouldn't it? It's impossible.
You can't.
And people out there can do some bang-on impressions of it, but it's very, very difficult. to like get an impression that sounds indistinguishable. Something I think we mentioned in another video about Fry's voice actor, Billy West.
Yes.
Where he talks just in his own voice when he's being Fry. And he did that tactically because he knew that anyone who wanted to try and replace him as Fry would do an exaggerated version of that. Because when people try and do an impression of a character, they always elevate it ever so slightly. And if they're playing just an ever so slightly elevated version of himself, it's not going to sound quite right.
Yeah.
When the character is known for this one thing, it's like, as soon as I watch that that reboot of HeMan, and Skeletor comes on screen, you're not going, yeah, and like, what's the point? If I'm not getting, fuck it, I'm putting Skeletor voice clips on.
Oh, it just ruins it. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's Alan Oppenheimer. Like, here we go, right? Let's get some fucking...
You're a whip scientist, and you could be a whip villain. It's the sorceress, you boob. They should
You
call
boobs? That's me. If he's not sounding like that, why bother?
Some voices cannot be like
you
replaced.
Whiplash. Fight, or I'll turn
They
you
just
into
can't
a
be
suitcase.
replaced.
You can't replace it, can
No, such a great voice.
you? That's the thing. Why replace him? He's right there in the studio. If you're trying to invoke the nostalgia people have for the original, and part of the nostalgia is based in the voices, and they're still around, they're still working, they're still willing to do it, just fucking pay them. It's worth it to not have people on the internet like me be like, it's not Skeletor!
Unless that voice actor refuses, they might ask and they're like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. Again, fair enough.
Well, I do not want to be Skeletor.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But
So do you want to call people a boob and get paid for it? I fucking want to do that. I love being a giant skeleton. It's like Peter Cullen's like, do you love being a robot? It's like, yeah, it's sick, innit? I love being a robot. And then you got the other side of the coin, where you got like people like Hugo Weaving, where he voiced Megatron in the live action Michael Bay movies. Is like, I fucking hate this. Because he was Megatron, and whenever he gets asked about being Megatron, he's like, what's a Megatron? And he doesn't care. And that's a shame. It's a shame that he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah. Maybe it's not for everyone. Like, I think it's such a cool job. Something I could never do. Because I like fluff my lines just talking normally. So
do, yes.
I would never be able to be one.
It's just that thing of like, who wouldn't want to be a cool robot?
I'd
And
be a cool
apparently
robot.
Hugo Weaving is like, I'm above this. It's like, but you're Agent Smith. Like, he reprised the role of Agent Smith for an advert once, which is amazing. And like the advert is so tone deaf because they have him trying to advertise the thing as if it's a good thing. It's like, why would you want your thing associated with the robots who liquefy people and feed them to babies? And he's like, oh yeah, we didn't know we did that in the movie. It's like, I think it's Matrix Resurrections where they bring everyone back. And Agent Smith's in that movie, but Hugo Weaving was busy. So rather than wait and put Hugo Weaving in it, they get a new actor who looks nothing like him. And it's just, wait. Just wait a few
Wait a
months.
bit, Jesus. Like, production takes years anyway. What's a few months?
But I remember seeing that where it's like, they got Keanu Reeves back, they got Carrie-Anne Moss. Where's Hugo Weaving? It's like, oh no, he was busy like doing a play or something like that. And he's like, I would have done it, but you know,
They didn't wait.
they didn't wait. Then why would you not bring him back? It's so stupid.
Wait,
If you're gonna like try and cash in on the nostalgia, go all in. Go all in.